Well, time to see if any of my Souls videos actually got any views now. Hold on. Wait. What? What? The time has come. I know what must be done. Well, I can't say I expected to be making this very soon. I had this video pinned off for the 100 subscriber special since the very beginning. And to be honest, I didn't expect I would even make anywhere close to that until, well, after December even. I honestly expected to level out at 30 unless I really got a following. Which, as it turns out, I was actually able to do within the span of, well, a little over the duration of the summer, which just boggles my mind at how fast I managed to do that. Like, I really can't thank you guys enough. There are just so many of you out there. The support has been overwhelming, and I really thank you guys for that, because this is something that I'm quite passionate about, and I wanted to keep doing, so thank you guys for 100 subscribers. There are a few of you that I'd like to thank in particular, because you guys have been really active in the comments and have given me a lot of good constructive criticism. So your guys' names will be up on the screen. Thank all of you. And you know what? Let's just get the road on the show here. Today we have a subject that, well, I've had on the back of my mind for a while now, and is something that traces back all the way to the initial spark that got my channel going, which of course was the problem with Modern Fire Emblem video, where I talk about basically Fates' two major problems. This subject also ties heavily to my last video where I talked about how Fire Emblem 15 should be made and handled by intelligent systems. Which, if you read the title, is what effect will Fates have on the franchise going forward? I think the most effective way to answer this question is by looking at what we can take away from Fates as a whole. And to me, that is three major things that I think defined Fates and set it apart from Awakening, and are most likely what will be carried over should the Fire Emblem series continue, which it most likely will at this point. Now, keep in mind that this video is subjective and is mostly regarding my opinion, but the things that I feel that defined Fates are what made it sell, so I think they will be carried over, and there's a good chance that they will be carried over, which, depending on which asset we're talking about, is either a good or a bad thing for the series going forward, which will be explained later on. Let's start regarding what I think probably was the best change that Fates made. So, strap in. This is gonna be a good one. The two things that I want to come out of Fates probably the most are the refinements that they made to the gameplay, and as the soundtrack, which obviously you could see in the title. Firstly, the refinements to the gameplay. Fates did an excellent job of balancing out Awakening's more broken mechanics, and I think it should be commended for that, as it was really one of Fates' strongest assets. Even when considering Conquest's punishing difficulty, it still felt very player-friendly, and I think that's a lot due to Fates' interface and the way that it handled a lot of things, mostly the pair-up mechanic, units, growths, and reclassing, which were all phenomenal changes that really helped balance the game from Awakening's lopsided difficulty curve. I would personally argue that Awakening, not Sacred Stones, is actually the easiest game in the series, and that's mostly due to how just broken pair-up was, and the reclass system in that game just absolutely destroyed everything if you were playing on any lower difficulty than Lunatic, basically. The one gameplay complaint I have with Fates is the weapon system, but that's a very easy fix, because they can either give them durability again to make everything worthwhile, or they can keep the infinite durability and just reintroduce Khan with a bit of a refined and more balanced system with a class standardized constitution, as I mentioned in my videos last time. The gameplay was still Fates' best part, and I would honestly come back to it just for the gameplay, although that's mostly for how Conquest was structured, but Conquest's gameplay is really, I think, some of the best that the series has had in a long time. That is to say, Conquest's story and Fates' story as a whole suffered a lot, but I'll talk a little bit about that later. In addition to non-story affecting things, well, not necessarily, Fates' soundtrack was hella amazing, just like Awakening's. As if there's anything that I can praise the newer Fire Emblem games on, it's definitely the soundtracks, because they bring so much energy and life to the game that other Fire Emblem games only have one or two standout pieces that really define that game, whilst Awakening and Fates, I think, just every single piece of music is just wonderful to listen to. In fact, one of my favorite pieces to use during these videos is actually Old Battlefield, which is a track from Awakening that plays mostly on a lot of the DLC maps, and is a remix slash mashup of a lot of the GBA themes with some stuff from the Radiant series, and it is amazing. I highly recommend you check it out if you have the time. And of course, addressing the elephant in the room, Lost in Thoughts All Alone. Oh man, this song is just both the Japanese version is amazing. The English version, I'd argue, is equally good. Raina Strober did a fine job. I don't see why people complain about it. I love the song personally. And what I personally think is that future Fire Emblem games should definitely have a vocal track as their main theme, because Lost in Thoughts All Alone was just so good. I do have a few singers in mind as to who should sing it. So, now that I gushed about what Fates actually did right for about 2.5 minutes, let's get back into what you guys oh so love, me hating on Fates. Child units are basically a series staple now. Thank you, Fates. We didn't really need this, but it's a thing now. Now, okay, child units as a mechanic don't really bother me. What bothers me is how they were executed into Fates. They seem forced, and this concerns me for the future of the franchise. Now, contrary to what most people actually think, Awakening was not the first game to have child units. This was in fact FE4, otherwise known as Genealogy of the Holy War, or if you're being really Japanese inclined, it's Sensen no Kifu. I probably pronounced that wrong, but oh well. Now, in Genealogy of the Holy War, child units were a welcome thing because the game was split into two distinct halves, one following the parent characters and one following the child characters that took place 20 years apart. No problem here, it all makes sense, checks out. Awakening. They threw time travel into the mix so that they could get the grown-up children of the parents into the plot. You know what? It doesn't bother me either. Time travel's okay. The game gave a good enough explanation. It's central to the plot. I'm okay with it. Do you know what we got in Fates? Pocket dimensions that make you age faster. Like, what?
I have several questions.
Okay, there are many plot holes here, most of which are, firstly, you talk to a person 4 times, then you have a kid together, but due to the nature of the game, you have to go into a pocket dimension to have the kid, who then grows up to adulthood in the span of 4 weeks? What? Child units and Fates are dumb. It's not that they're bad characters, it's just they have no reason to exist. Now, I know the game likes side story chapters, but can we actually make them plot related like they were in Fire Emblem 7 or 6? No? Okay, we need the kids. Alright, fine. Why don't we have grandchild units? Child units are probably gonna be around to stay. I know I didn't give a really good argument against why they shouldn't be included. As a gameplay mechanic, they're fine, but as a story mechanic, they're terrible. So either get rid of them or legitimately explain them. Hell, my own suggestion in my How Fire Emblem 15 Should Be Made video was, after you beat the game, have a 10-chapter post-game where you get all the child units and have a little side story with them that takes place way later. And then, just because it's a video game, add like some sort of New Game Plus functionality where you can use the child units in the main story. That would be perfectly fine. as it wouldn't dampen the main story, and you would still get to use the child units with their parents. Not only that, but for a special thing that they could do with the child units is every support conversation that they have with their parents in the New Game Plus, the parents instead appear in sort of an older, more aged-looking portrait. This would diversify the art style and make everything look so much more alive and thriving. But whether or not Intelligent Systems actually does this is a total crapshoot, so sorry, but this is just wishful thinking if child units are ever to be removed or even explained in a decent fashion. Speaking of plot holes and hiccups in Fates, how about we go on to the final point I want to make before I move on to my quick little conclusion. I have talked at nauseum about how bad Fates and Awakening messed up their stories, so I'll try to keep this one brief. The actual effect that I think Fates and its story has on the franchise, much more than the dual version release or just the overall poor quality of it, is the fact that from Awakening to Fates, Intelligent Systems was actually willing to listen to criticism. I don't know about you guys, but every major gaming journal review that I read of Awakening was pretty much the same, as it praised a lot of Awakening's features relating to its story and its characters. A lot of the complaints that we as Fire Emblem fans had with the Awakening story, namely the huge plot holes and terrible villains, were just that, complaints from the fans. The older fans, and arguably some of the newer fans as well, were able to critique Awakening's story enough that Intelligent Systems and Nintendo actually listened. The act of them hiring Shin Kibayashi to do Fire Emblem Fates' story, whether or not he did a good job, is still up in the air. But the simple fact that an effort was made to actually remedy something that was wrong gives me a lot of hope, especially for the older fans who like a lot of the older mechanics and things to actually make a comeback rather than just be forgotten like a lot of the other characters are. Again, I think Intelligent Systems is definitely on the right track by hiring an outside writer. Again, I'd still like to see a Western fantasy author take the helm of the series, but still, they were actually willing to listen to criticism. This is honestly something that few developers do, and I commend them for it. Again, Fates' story is not the best thing in the world, far from it in fact. Although I don't exactly know how much creative freedom Shin Kibayashi had, so again, part of it might be intervention in order to make the game sell better. But still, this is a great sign of Intelligent Systems actually making an effort to fix something that's wrong with the series. So, with that being said, I have a little bit of a conclusion to make, and we can finish this video and put the topic of whether or not Fates is actually good to rest once and for all. So there you have it. Those are the three things that I think Fates will have the biggest effect on the franchise going forward. We'll have a more consistent soundtrack, some great gameplay, but our plots will probably still suffer, and we'll still have the annoyance of child units who aren't explained very well in the context of the game. Basically, all that means is every game from here on out is going to be Awakening 4.0. But nonetheless, it still gives me hope because Intelligent Systems was listening to their criticisms. So, it's good to know that we may yet see another classic Fire Emblem before our time is up. In fact, a lot of you guys in the comments have actually been suggesting that perhaps the handheld Fire Emblem games will remain in the Awakening style, and that the next console Fire Emblem will get, possibly for the NX, will actually follow in the classic series' footsteps, but I personally think that this is unlikely. So, with that all being said, thank you guys so much for 100 subscribers. This is a milestone I never thought I would reach this soon, and thank you guys, because no matter what games you like to play, happy hunting.